Hey everyone, John Lorden here. Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Johnny Vlogs. My mind is still kind of wrapped up in the Lindsay Buziak case, so today's topic is going to touch on a certain aspect of that. Essentially, the thought that could social media interfere with a police investigation. Before we get into that, I need to thank some new supporters. First, a big thank you to Cher for making a big contribution to the channel. I really appreciate that. In terms of Patreon new supporters, Catherine Marcus, Whitney Hancock, Elizabeth Jansen, Amanda Jordan, and Yolanda Marino Diaz, all new pledges. Hey guys, thank you so much for supporting the channel. And Nicole edited her pledge. She upped it. Thank you so much, Nicole. I truly appreciate that. So there was a video clip that I bumped into when I was looking into the Lindsay Buziak stuff. It was actually sent by someone that was a little bit of a critic of Jeff's, but of course I looked into their information. And there was something about this particular interview. This is with Sergeant Chris Horsley, Staff Sergeant, I believe, from the Saanich Police Department. And he makes a comment kind of tagged in right at the end of an interview. And I just wanted to explore that with you guys a little bit. I've looked into this a little bit. I've heard something like this come up in one other case before. We're going to discuss that after we check out the video clip. But let's go ahead and start with the clip of his comment.
We firmly believe there is a reasonable sized group that have personal and firsthand knowledge. Those are the people that we've always sought out, and we will continue to do so. Unfortunately, of course, it often gets lost in the white noise of social media with people posting things that they really don't have that firsthand knowledge of.
So just the way that that was phrased a little bit, it made it sound like, first of all, I've heard him speak about this case before. I believe it was on the Dateline episode where he kind of alluded to the same thing. They think that there's a large conspiracy of people involved here. They're essentially waiting for someone in that conspiracy to come forward to crack this case for them. I don't know why that seems to be their main approach. I don't know why they keep talking about that publicly without giving some information as to maybe entice that person. We know that there was a $100,000 reward for information on this case that was posted, I believe, by the family at one point. Nothing came out of that. So 10 years down the road, still hoping that at some point someone in this, conspiracy is going to crack and just spill the beans with everyone. I don't know, first of all, if personally I think that's the best approach. But outside of that, his comment seemed to allude to that social media is actually somehow interfering in them finding this person that they need to talk to. And I don't really understand that point. I really hope that Staff Sergeant Chris Horsley does decide to come on the channel. I am going to send him an email, but I kind of don't understand the mentality behind that. So I looked into several articles today. I haven't done a really deep dive, but I just wanted to kind of get my head around what is out there in terms of police departments and social media. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I know in particular when we were talking about the Delphi murder case that the Indiana police came forward after they released the composite sketch and were saying, look, we don't want people on Facebook taking pictures of other people on Facebook, putting it next to the composite sketch, and then sending that to us and saying, hey, look, here's your guy, here's your guy. They were just getting flooded with messages. And they basically put out a press release stating that, hey, look, this way that you guys are using this composite sketch is not what we're looking for, and it's gumming us up a little bit, and we need real tips. So in that case, we had a very specific idea of what the issue was. They told us what the problem was with the information they provided and how people were using it to try to elicit tips. Here, they have provided some information, but in terms of these types of cases, it has been fairly limited. And we're not getting a very clear explanation from Staff Sergeant Horsley here about what this means, where he thinks that there is this social media aspect that is somehow blocking them from being able to find the people that they need to find. So with that in mind, let's just jump into a couple articles and take a look at kind of the phenomena of social media and how it has been affecting police work. Starting at govtech.com, here's an article from way back 2011, about 7 years ago, How Social Media is Changing Law Enforcement. Law enforcement tools have evolved from wanted posters to police radio, patrol cars, and social networks such as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Community policing today has also expanded through social networking to locate missing children, alert neighbors of suspicious activity, and even inform the public about crimes committed in their neighborhoods. I bumped into another section in a different article about Seattle, that there's actually a Twitter account in Seattle that specializes in broadcasting information about stolen cars. So if you live in that area and you want to be part of a network of people that literally get tweets about, oh, it's this type of car and here's the license plate number, it's a message that is being sent from the community to the criminals saying basically, you know, it's like a community watch, but we're doing it virtually now. Some really interesting, cool things have been happening in the social media space in terms of trying to affect crime. But back to the article here. But social networking is a tool that cuts both ways. Flash mobs organized online in Philadelphia swarmed stores to shoplift and attack pedestrians. Pedophiles use social networking platforms to share photos and video, and terrorists recruit members and plan attacks via these tools. I've also found several examples of police departments that have used social media to bust people in those categories as well. So it's kind of a good thing, bad thing. If they're organizing there, if the information is public, then the police department can look at it there and they don't need a warrant because it's publicly accessible information. But social media is having a positive impact too. The platforms can be used by law enforcement to broaden intelligence gathering and leverage public support. In particular, for the Lindsay Buziak case, that second point I think is major, and I don't believe that the Saanich PD has done a very good job leveraging public support in that case. We have had a very clear example of the importance of that this summer, said Sergeant Sean Whitcomb of the Seattle Police Department, when a person became aware of a plot to kill soldiers and civilians at a military processing center with automatic weapons and grenades. So, of course, talking about a situation like that, it's a very good thing that there are people that are trying to enlist social media and use it as a tool for law enforcement. Law enforcement agencies around the country may see social media as a double-edged sword, but it's here to stay and must be placed in the tool belts of officers and departments. According to Dunwoody, Georgia Police Chief Billy Grogan, embracing social media is one of the smartest decisions law enforcement can make today. Let's jump to another article over at NPR. Some more examples here. The promises and pitfalls of social media. This is from back in 2013, so we're getting a little more current here. And there's some really interesting stories that I'm not going to go into deeply here today, but stories about police officers using social media personally, and some good and bad things that happen around that as well. One in particular, a police officer basically got fired for what he tweeted. Those types of stories are kind of in these articles as well, but I'm really trying to stay focused on, do they help or do they hinder investigations? A nationwide survey conducted last year of 600 law enforcement agencies found that 92% use some form of social media. Of those plugged-in agencies, 90% use Facebook, 50% Twitter, and 37% YouTube. I just want to make a small note here. I know that Facebook users seem to believe that everyone is on Facebook. That is so not true. It is just not true. So even when, in my missing person tips, when I talk about what to do on your Facebook site, one of the first things is make it publicly accessible. Now, luckily, most of the time when I run into press releases for police departments, they have done that. Even if it's hosted on Facebook, as a non-Facebook user, I'm able to get to that information. But it's just an important consideration that I hope they're thinking of here. Almost 2/3 say their accounts have improved community relations, but even more say it has helped with the most integral part of their work, investigating crimes. They reviewed social media profiles of suspects or victims, created undercover social identities to gather information, and posted surveillance videos or images in hopes the public might be able to help. It's kind of an expanded version of the good work they could do on the beat, says Sergeant Dave Norris of the San Mateo, California Police Department. And really, social media, it's weird. I know some people use it in a way where they stay anonymous and maybe they act in a way that is not how they truly are if you would meet them face to face. But for other people out there, it's just an extension of their personality. And even for people that might be using that in that anonymous kind of flip mode way, it's still an extension of their personality. It might actually be a more honest representation of their personality in some way. So I'm kind of curious as to why you wouldn't want to know that and use that information in these types of investigations. The Philadelphia Police Department is active on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, where it regularly gets tips about crimes. During a fatal building collapse in June, it used its accounts to disseminate emergency information to the public as it was coming in. The department has also trained about 40 officers to tweet using their own individual accounts. And like I mentioned before, seems kind of hit or miss on individuals in the department tweeting. I really still don't know how I feel about that. Very few police departments understand the depth of social media or have put together a comprehensive strategy on how to use it, says Lori Stevens, founder of Laws Communications, a consulting company that works with law enforcement agencies to create these strategies. When will it really be a must, Stevens said. From my perspective, I think that was yesterday. And I think I kind of agree with her on that. Jumping over to Brookings.edu. FBI director identifies challenges to law enforcement. This is one of the only articles so far where I've been able to find something where I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yes, this would certainly change how law enforcement does an investigation and make it tougher. So here's the one very valid point that I've been able to find, beside the one that we talked about with the Delphi case. The proliferation of communication platforms is a huge challenge for law enforcement. Previously, law enforcement authorities could obtain a court order for a wiretap from a single phone carrier. Now, with countless providers, networks, apps, and means of communication, the options for lawful surveillance are limited. So essentially, there are way more organizations that they would have to get warrants for now than there used to be. And when I think about this, it rings true for me because I know that I've reviewed cases where just finding out that a missing person was using this type of application is a valid and very important part of the mystery that seems to come out a bit later because there's analysis that has to go on. Someone has to get into their phone, see what apps they have installed there. Were they communicating with specific people on those apps? And then if they were, then you have to try to get a warrant specific to that company for that application. There's also the aspect of where these companies are. They don't have to be based in America. So are you trying to get warrants internationally? And does that affect particularly smaller police departments? I think that's a really important point to consider as well. There is another aspect that comes up in my search on all this stuff. And that was talking about if there's an active shooter situation over at WLNS.com. This is an article that was written fairly recently. It's kind of coming on the heels of the Parkland shooting, February 16th, 2018. If someone is Facebook Living an active shooter situation at a school, that's going to create that panic with those who are watching it, said a sheriff. I kind of agree, but, I don't know how much more that panic is going to impede the law enforcement. I mean, is he saying that, people are going to start calling up, ringing 911 saying, I'm on Facebook Live, I'm watching this shooting that's going on? I don't know. There might be an aspect to that, but it's not very clearly defined here. On Twitter, when I see a tweet that there's a shooting at a school, I get pretty panicked. It comes right off. I don't need to see footage of it to understand that there's a terrible situation that's going on. And for me personally, when I see that type of information coming across on something like Twitter, I'm assuming, maybe it's a bad assumption, but I'm assuming at some point that someone has already contacted the authorities. But this does kind of raise an interesting point for me. Does Facebook Living in particular, or live streaming the event in particular, change law enforcement in some way? Are they all of a sudden just getting bombarded with communication from these people that are just watching it? If you're concerned about social media or you're concerned about putting stuff out there, then you're not worrying about taking cover or doing what you can do to protect yourself. I think that's a really important point and certainly makes some sense as well. And there's a very good chance that the suspect who is committing the crime could be following what is being said or what is happening, and he could very well take action. If in this specific situation about an active shooting situation, I don't know about that aspect. I mean, is someone really walking around with their phone in one hand, checking all the accounts of everyone that's at the school while they're, carrying a gun in the other? I don't quite see that. But in the bigger conversation that we're having here about it affecting investigations or law enforcement, possibly, and maybe that's a bit of what's going on with Staff Sergeant Horsley. Maybe he's concerned that if someone like Jeff does have accurate information that is getting out there, that the people that did this are going to be able to review that and come up with some type of countermeasure to it. Maybe that makes a bit more sense. I'm really not certain. But over at leb.fbi.gov is also an article that raises a very important aspect of this, which is specifically about officers using social media and how that could open them up in terms of criminals that might want to figure out who their family is or where they live and the risks around that. And I think that's a really important concern to bring up in this conversation as well. But like I told you guys, this was just a little bit of tiptoeing into this topic. Please do me a favor. Let me know your thoughts on this. Share them with me in the comments below. Maybe we'll continue this conversation on next week's episode. If you find other articles, other aspects specifically for, and this is where I'm really trying to get this conversation going, is the social media layer impeding investigations, and how? Because if we understand what the problem is, I'm pretty sure that we can talk about a solution to that problem, and it doesn't involve turning off all of social media. Obviously, that's never going to happen. It doesn't involve police completely ignoring social media, because obviously we've talked about several examples here where it has been extremely useful for certain cases. There's got to be something in between there. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here on Johnny Vlogs today. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you'll come back to the Lord and Arts channel tomorrow. See you there.